Now this came today from Bruce Hunt. I want to share this with you. This is kind of the kind of thing that I really get good feelings about. You know, and over the time I've been doing the Typhoon, a lot of people have sent me books and whatnot, and of course I appreciate and saved them all up in the Spitfire bedroom, but this is something, Bruce Hunt sent this in, and it comes from a place called Snyder's Treasures, and he downloaded this from Fine Scale Modeler in 1984, I believe. What it is, it's the collection of the models that used to be used as recognition models. It's an excellent article. In fact, Karen even read it. She said it was interesting. The list of them. Now, one of the things I thought, you know, Bruce Hunt is really a great guy. He's sent a lot of stuff in the past. But look at this. This is a real World War II recognition model. You can see the parting line where they had the tooling. Of course, molding in those days was not as sophisticated as it is now. It has British Typhoon written on. Over the years, I've gotten models from several other people, and a little Mustang from Gerald Champ, and so, lots of stuff. And you even got the little rudder, this is the prototype type of cockpit, early model one. And what I thought would be really cool with this is there's a little place to attach it. We're eventually going to have, when the Typhoon is retired and hanging up there, you even see the dihedral angle. One of the things we want to do is we're going to hang it from a string because we want to paint the ceiling of the room in clouds with the background of maybe some bombers crashing or some German planes, and then have our Typhoons and Spitfires, everything hanging up in that room. And the cannons, that's really nice, the little blisters. From Bruce Hunt, and I was totally unaware. And by the way, this is the guy that I think that he got it from on eBay, if I read the note right. This guy buys and sells these collectibles. But I have to tell you, I always love to add a little treasure like this to my collection. I think that is just absolutely great. And thanks a lot to Bruce Hunt. But people that may or may not know, and I'm not going to make a big project out of this, but a lot of people are interested. We are, at the time we do, of course, pipes for control line stunt. We're also manufacturing pipes. These go into a boat. And we're doing some for Lyle Larson and Chip Hyde at the same time. And what I wanted to just quickly show is this is done in a new way. Now see, a tune pipe for a racing application doesn't need a baffle. So what the drawings that we're working off, and again, this is going to be for boat racing, one of the things that we're doing, and I hope this is going to work well for the customer, he made the mandrels, had them machined out of a material that melts at 250 degrees, 248. And what we're going to do, we have the mandrels, we're going to lay up a pipe with some special resin from Cotronics that cures at room temperature. And then when we post-cure it at 250 degrees, the material should, in theory, melt and leave the pipe. We've never done this before, so I thought this might be interesting because there are so many people interested in modeling. And I even know Don Dixon is out there grinding away, making cowlings and wheel pants or whatever. I thought it'd be interesting to watch how other parts, other aspects of the hobby get their parts manufactured. Let's see how nicely this is machined up. Now the only thing I need to do when I make this part, I need to build this end up with some tow so they can put their coupler on there. Again, but it opens up the door. What it does for us, it opens up the door. If we ever want to make, and I think we may very soon, we want to make some kind of 4-cycle carbon exhaust system. We want to work with some new materials here. And the material is a resin that's good to 500 degrees. And that's the part of this that I'm excited about testing. Because if that resin system works, it probably will work for a 4-cycle exhaust system too. And we're going to be making up 2 of these today. We've used this resin before. It's the Ralco 4461. It's a 500 degree resin. We're going to try, and we're going to give this a real accurate test. This is the hardener. 100 parts to 17, needless to say. You want to do that real accurately with a gram scale. And you don't want to mix big giant batches. But But what this is going to open the door to, what I hope this is going to be, because our normal resin is 350 degrees or 450. We have some of the 450. But if this works for his tune pipe, I will go ahead and we'll start making up some parts for what I hope is going to be a 4-cycle exhaust system. And we don't know exactly if that's really going to be what we want, but this will be an excellent test, and the customer will come out of it with 2 test tune pipes. Step 1, we're going to take and wrap the carbon sock over the mandrel. That's the first step in this procedure. Trim off the extra. We'll have a little bit of extra. Shame if he ordered one more 2 inches, we could have made 3 pipes. Beside the point, these are small pipes. They're for racing applications. High entry angle, high return angle. Now the next step will be to really accurately mix that resin. Like any other resin system, the 2 keys are, once you think it's mixed, keep mixing it. In this case, I'm going to mix it even more because they had a big note on there. And I need to build up the front end of the pipe to get the diameter that he's using for his coupler, so I'm going to do that with toe. Again, anytime we can add to our database. This is from Cotronics, by the way. They're in Brooklyn, New York. Cotronics resin. Now there's a couple of notations with this resin. This resin really is toxic and smelly at the same time, so we're looking to get this part of it over as soon as possible. Again, anytime you're using a new resin system, you want to, at least I do, thoroughly read all of the literature that comes with it. In this case, it's quite extensive. Now what we need to do is build up the front of this pipe for a coupler of a very specific dimension. I'm going to do that with toe. The first part of it is I want to get all the resin on and just let the resin soak. This would also be kind of an upgrade if this resin would be kind of an upgrade for the tune pipes that sunflyers use. There's already an application for it because if you've noticed, a lot of tune pipes seem to deteriorate up around the head pipe real early. That's from the resin really taking its toll up there, a beating. Now we want to get our resin to soak in as good as we possibly can here. Working against a time window here, so but it's funny how from one project you can learn. In other words, the pipes they want to make for pylon racing, Jimmy is making Teflon mandrels. In this case, because this is a prototype, what's happening is they want to dyno test one of these pipes before they pay for the cost of doing Teflon tooling. And this was a very, very good way of doing a prototype test. I got to be real careful in the back here to get that to come down. I can see that might or might not be a little bit of a problem. As you lay a part up, usually you can figure some of that out. Now the next part is to figure out with the toe how I'm going to get the toe on here, and that remains to be seen. How we're going to be able to do that. I'm working on this end of the pipe. And what this will allow me to do, actually this will work out real well, because now I can take this part and stretch it. I can put some tension on the back of it. Get a little more resin. I really mixed way too much. I'm used to mixing an amount of resin that we would use on the stump pipes, which is considerably more. I think that'll take care of that. Now all those pipes are out there drying, and I hope that's going to work out okay. I'm just going to go through a bunch of these pictures. These are from AlRabe. Some of them show he did no coupons, no captions, so I can't really tell. Obviously this looks like the Millennium Mustang being built on his kitchen island, where he placed the jig. I'll run through the pictures real quickly. I'm assuming that that's the muffler outlet there. PA, the muffler. Kind of unique stuff. His stooge-mounted tail wheel. By the way, that last video we got from him was kind of neat, and I want to thank him again for sharing his stuff with us. I know he's been looking at a lot of Windy videos because several people, including Bill Rutherford and now Richard Oliver, they all have a bunch of videos down that way. The Millennium Mustang comes to life. Now that would be a perfect plane to make a carbon body for. By the way, Bill Rutherford has told me today, in fact, they were going out flying four-strokes, that he was going to start working on a carbon fiber Bearcat. So if anybody would like a free carbon fiber Bearcat fuselage from Bill, he said he'll supply it for free. All you have to do is buy him pizza. That probably ensures that Bill Rutherford will never talk to Windy again, but seriously, we enjoyed the visit at his shop. And we'll try to get Al some of our current videos too, so he can have a few good laughs. Anyway, this looks like, I'm going to guess that this is the muffler here or the fuel tank. Pretty creative stuff. We should have our fuel tank back. Joe's been working on that. Some laminated shells. And of course the part we all love best, the final plane. From AlRabe. Al, it's good to have you back. Now one of the next motors we're going to test, no, we're not going to test that, trust me. We're not going to test the twin either. But I'm very curious to see this. This came from Gerald Champ today. He wants me to run the engine in, kind of get it dialed in for him. Let's see, it's a Sado 80. As I take it apart in the box, I notice some of the things that are different about the 80 than the other engines. First off, it comes with tools, unless these might be Gerald's tools. They come with all different kind of paperwork, telling you how to run the engine and whatever. Sado advertising, we don't really need that. Tools, more decals, more tools, more everything, and that we don't need. Here's what we do need, the 80. Now this is an 80. A little bit different carburetor. I'm trying to look at this. Ooh, we could use that manifold. Ooh. That looks like a smaller diameter, but maybe I'm wrong. The rear inlet has the same exhaust pipe. Looks like it uses the 72 exhaust and muffler. Anyway, the next day, now we're not going to do this today because we are in Snow City here. It's always snowing here, I can't believe it. But the next thing we're going to do Next motor we get to test, or while we're waiting for some of our paint to dry, will be Champ's Sado 80. And our test program is an ongoing thing. I suspect we're going to have even more motors by the time spring gets here. The Sado 80. Our little pipe project. You can get a little look at how these came out of the oven. I trimmed them off. They're ready for the second coat of resin. What I do is wherever this resin tends to drip and drool, and it does, I put on plenty of resin. These are not, they really don't have to be ultralight like they do on an airplane. They're going in a boat. In fact, there's a little spot right here. What I try to do is get out all the spots. Now I need to build this side up to meet his coupler by 100 thousandths. I'm going to do that with carbon tow. And then I'm going to put another coat of resin on the whole pipe once it's sanded down. If you don't sand it down, you don't get the second coat of resin on, it'll never bind. So even if I did this with a machine, by hand it's plenty easy. Midgley has got the prototype Sado Typhoon muffler ready to be welded. We're looking forward to seeing what that looks like and possibly making some of them out of a similar high temperature resin than this. Once they're smooth like this, then it's ready for the next coat of resin. It needs to be roughed up. Trying to determine if this material sands the same as the other material that we've used, since this is a totally new resin. It looks like it does. It doesn't look like there's much difference, machine or hand sanding. Now what we have to do with this pipe, we have to build up, where's my gauge? We have to build up this diameter to 665, which is quite a bit. And when I put the second coat of resin on, of course, there's a time window during which this can be laminated, and after that it's a real problem. It doesn't want to laminate. So we're in that window right now. What I'm going to do is, and I don't know how much tow is going to have to go on here, and then the last thing is we have to put this in our oven over by George's and melt out the material. Remember, the tool is still inside of this. There's no joints on this. Now, if we didn't have to build up the end of this, we would just do this in 2 or 3 coats and we would have that really nice finish. But because this is a racing pipe and they want that coupler, and I'm really trying to think of how I would like to make a Sado exhaust system. That is for sure one of the things we're going to be experimenting with real soon. Remember, the 4-cycle exhausts get hotter than 2 cycles, so you just can't use the old-fashioned resin. Now we're going to see if this is going to work. Now it can be bigger. It's not a problem if it's bigger, because I can machine it down. I can just put it in the lathe and turn it down. There's a letter full of sadness in his bag around the border. A pair of boots for someone who had to make the order. A violin in the back for the Reverend Mr. Black. Actually, I can already see we probably should be using the thinner toe. But that's what we're going to learn from this. I just need to build up material here. Sure, I got plenty now. Yeah, I'm gonna probably abandon that. Again, I'm looking to learn during this procedure. Let's see if we can do this with the toe. We could pre-wet the toe. And believe me, as crude as this is how you learn. If you're not real familiar with working with this material, it all looks so easy. When you see a propeller or a tune pipe, you say, oh, no problem, I'll make that. Then you start making it and you go, how do they do that? Now, a real nice way to do this would be if we chucked this in a lathe and we could just draw it up. With a stunt pipe, we don't need to build this front up like this, but yeah, that's better. Okay, so we learned plenty. So first, let's cut it. And part of any really learning curve is accepting the fact that in the beginning you're going to screw some stuff up. Go back and look at those first, the people that have all the videos, those first Spitfire exhaust molds when I was trying to use art supply store molding resin. Holy mackerel. Now I look back at it and laugh, but at the time it happened, wow, I was really disappointed. I really couldn't believe it. You know, how can other people do this and I can't? It was very disappointing. Now, we don't have to make this real, in fact, we don't want it real smooth. So I was thinking I could possibly, instead of using rubber bands, what's our best friend in the world? Duct tape. We know we have plenty of diameter on here now. I gotta wipe my finger off before we go shut the camera off. If you saw this camera, you can't really see it. It's got more epoxy on it. Back into the oven. I've had to use the kitchen oven to melt out because my oven, I didn't want to drive all the way over to Georgia, so what I do, put it in a baking pan, of course, melt out the resin, and because these are racing pipes, we're going to put 2 layers of carbon on them. So what's going to happen is this, once that's all cleaned up and scuffed up, it's going to have another layer of carbon fiber on top of it, and another layer of resin. Now what I do at this stage of the operation, see there's a whole second layer of carbon on top of that. I let this kind of room cure until I can touch it, and then I put it out in the oven and post-cure it for the second time. So both layers of that resin are post-cured at this point in time, and that should be a pretty durable pipe. Another thing came in today's mail was, this is the tank. It's a 6.5 ounce tank. That'll be one of the tanks for the Typhoon until we can finish the tooling for the carbon fiber tanks. And we want to start, if nothing else, we want to start with a metal tank and then have a spare, but somewhere down the road possibly make this out of carbon fiber. This was made by Joe Adamusco. And by the way, this has a baffle in it. And he made a complete drawing of doing it for other people that would like to see how he makes the tanks. And this is from Lieutenant Colonel Tom McLean, and he sent me, this is really interesting by the way. He's making a semi-scale model of course this is the Red Baron, owned by Darrell Greenemeyer, that at one time I believe was the world's record holder, speed record holder. Privately owned, and not a military plane. The nice paint job you can see on there, and of course the photo is signed. I'll have a nice place in my shop for this, I'm sure. Here's the swept back wing configuration here, pretty neat. I told Tom I was going to possibly consider a B-25. He sent me this photo pack, and he much prefers the Marauder. The A-26 or the Marauder, well, you know, Tom, they're all cool. May have a twin with 2 4-strokes next year and 2 throttle controls. The neat thing is I never know ahead of time what I'm going to build. Who knows if I'm going to build a Mustang or a... You never know. I really never know but something always catches my eye. I never go a year without something burning inside of me. That would make a good stunt model. Nice high aspect wing, dihedral in the tail, 4-bladed props. I hope Ken Clapson and Walt Brownell are listening. Both of those guys are building 4-stroke twins. And just when you think you've seen it all, check it out. Nice nose art. Nose art, it's tail art. To nudity and pornography. This is the model for you. Manjock, I hope you're listening. Same plane with a different paint job with a little less nudity. Of course, Tom's really nice rendition of Steve Woolley's Cobra. Tom and his family in front of a military jet. I'm assuming it's a Phantom, but it might not be. And we get to meet Tom's family every year at usually at Brodax and at some of the local contests. And there he is. This is an exact replica of the plane he flew in the military, or commanded. I don't know how you say it, because he gets annoyed if you don't call him lieutenant or commander or general or whatever he is. Tom, you're not a general anymore. How does it work when you're in the military? When you get out, are you still a general, or are you? I don't know. But you know, Tom, as long as you're building model planes, you're every bit as good as Windy. I don't care what Windy says about you. Anyway, nice rendition of Billy Suarez's Phantom. He's not a general in the Air Force. Anyway, back to work. Now, needless to say, one of the things I've wrestled with for the whole building of this model is the paint job. And I have looked at every possibility, trying to decide exactly how I wanted to paint this model. And I'm still trying to decide, and that's typical, except for a few models that I've had no choice, like the Miss Ashley. A couple little side items here before we go any further. This came from Don Dixon, and it's the Scale Master handle. I guess that's the right word. I want to put this on the video for anybody that's anticipating. Now, we already know of one other person, Bob Zambelli, that's already using this system, or using a system similar to it. Well, believe it or not, you can buy it. It's all set to go. If this appeals to you, or guys like Walt Brownell that fly several events, Walt probably already knows about this. Ken Clapson, who has some love of semi-scale. You can download this off of their website, and I will put that on. And here's some of the things Don had suggested. This is what I like about several people working on the same project, and I try to do the parts that I can do and contribute, and the other people. Now, this is Jim Young's handle, and we have one of them already, which we're going to be testing very soon. But I just thought I'd put the update on here, and they really do have a fine website. I would be checking it out right now if you have any interest at all. Let's just put this on here. Those people that really are into the computer part of it know how to log right in. I'll leave that up there a couple seconds. Anyway, that's from Don Dixon, and that is a very interesting choice that we're all going to have. Now, I would personally find that to be maybe a little awkward for stunt flying, but certainly for some people, it's going to fit their needs perfectly, and it's available. That's the nice thing. It's not the kind of thing of you have to spend 2,000 hours developing it. Somebody's already done all the hard work, and you basically can just do the enjoyable part of fly the planes. We got some pictures here I want to run through from John Gunn, and obviously his grandson. John, I got to tell you something. I wish I had your grandson's good looks. And your money. Anyway, obviously it looks like a Magnum. Now, we've been looking at various ways of setting up 4-stroke cowlings. There's one of, this is John Gunn's Magnum, how he sets up the cooling vents. Here, the key number is the inlet hole and the outlet hole. The outlet hole should be roughly 6 times bigger than the inlet hole for proper cooling. This is his Cardinal Big Jim nose construction. His tail is under 3 ounces before painting. Before silver. Doped, but before silver, and that's a great weight. Top view of the Cardinal. Now, from this view, it looks like he could really use one of those fiberglass cowlings. Don't worry, John, Christmas might be coming up. Maybe Brett will buy you one. And I'm always interested in seeing how other people build, little tricks, little tips, little things they show about their workshop. Now, the other part of this, a lot of people don't want to have a fiberglass cowling for whatever reason. They want some custom size or shape. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that either. Of course, has quite a collection of models, all kinds, all sizes, all shapes. John, by the way, is the guy that sent the scissors. Mr. Scissors, we call him. Picture of his Nobler, FP40 by Charlie Melanson, 46 ounce. Big Jim nose. Notice the pipe on the side of the fuselage. Thousands of flights on this plane. Another Nobler, hand cut and built by Walt Musgrove. We know Walt. Big Jim nose construction, 14 years old. Sig Magnum, Big Jim nose, been passed from one club member to another. Well, that's kind of like what we're doing with tradition. A lot of people get service out of a plane. By the way, John, Peeps loves the name of your plane, Southern Bluebird. He says, how come you didn't put Peeps out there? But look at a bird on the rudder. I don't believe this. Look at this picture. I didn't see this. Peeps that's a great idea. Wow, Peeps. We got to send that John Gunn a nice video to show him how much we love him. This is a Buccaneer custom model, 60 ounces in silver, Big Jim ST nose, ST60. Mr. John Gunn, how come my picture is not on the rudder, Mr. John Gunn? I want my picture on the rudder next time. Peeps, say hello to John Gunn. Anyway, we have several people already that are thinking about turning Cardinals into Ravens next year, or turning Stragers into Ravens, I don't know. But nobody wants to make a Peeps. Jaguar, 44 ounces, ready to add the trim. Man, we just get itching to starting to paint on this plane. Believe me, I'm itching every day. The Nobler built in 1953, Max 35, reworked by Charlie Melanson. This is John's Ringmaster Air Force. Big fan of the old Ringmaster kits. And a pretty long caption here. He took the train to VSC, something that, by the way, Mike Costello and I have considered that, to make a train trip out of it. Because obviously you can take anything you want on a train. These are the boxes that he made. It looks like he's growing marijuana here too, I just noticed that. Met some interesting people on the train. Yeah, we have considered going to VSC on the train. That ought to be in the observation car. John's Profile Cardinal, ready for wingtips. Small amount of John's goodies that he keeps for his. Look at he's got the things like the hospital. Oh, he sells hospital supplies. Look at this, all the bins and everything. That's a great idea. I like about seeing other people's shops. Now, I don't have this kind of a fan operation, but the pencil sharpener is something I don't have. The coil compressor hose that mine exploded and broke, and a thing to hang all the tools. Now, I've got something similar to that, but and of course a nice radio. I'm sure there's a VCR in there somewhere too. The wall of the shop, I like the idea of the shelves above there for storage, planned storage up top. Well, you don't have to have a big area to build model planes. It's one of the advantages. You need a very small area relative to if you had a NASCAR car or something. Not to mention the checkbook you need. Anyway, we're looking forward to Don Dixon. Don is videotaping the making of his new shop for us. And Bill Rutherford's shop. I mean, it just goes on and on. Don built this. This is his backyard. It looks like he's got railroad tracks going out there. John, I got to tell you, this is one thing I would really like to have. If I could figure out a way of doing it, is to have my shop in the garage so that I could paint inside the house. Now, we're just coming up on the painting of the Typhoon, and there's no way I can paint inside the house other than when Karen is far, far away. It has quite an extensive collection of goodies. Kind of tip that video allows you to share. John glued sandpaper with the rough side out on his battery after seeing an accident where somebody's battery, it doesn't say who, that the battery slipped into the prop and caused an injury. Well, that's a good idea. I'm going to keep that in mind. I was thinking of something like Velcro, maybe reverse Velcro, something with a texture on it. That slipperiness is not a big advantage. Anyway, from John Gunn, we really appreciate it, John. Well, it's kind of the time we all hope for, I hope for anyway. Basically, the plane has a base coat on it. I always put it in one piece to try to see, if there's any mistakes, and I found one that a fingernail went in there when somebody was looking at the plane. A couple little spots around the cowl I want to touch up still. And probably another coat or two around the canopy here. I see a couple of spots where the paint is a little thin. All beside the point. The point is I want to start the paint job, because the paint job on this goes a lot of cycles. There's a lot of masking and back masking and whatever. And I just want to put a little storyboard on of some of the things I want to do to make this paint job a little bit better, lighter, and easier to do than most. Some little upgrades we've made over the years. And one of the first things I do when the time window comes that I'm going to do a paint job, I go get all the videos that have the finishing technology on them, and I run by them and watch them out of the corner of my eye for a simple reason. I always forget one or two of the steps. An example of that is the year I went to do roundels. The second year, I couldn't remember how I did the roundels, and it was very easy the first time on the original Spitfire videos. Did I paint the red first or the blue first and then back? I couldn't remember. I plugged the video in, bingo. Had the information, just like having a book or a magazine with a reference article. So that's one of the techniques I use to try to save time. Any of the light colors that I'm going to use, I decant. Decant means I don't shake and mix the paint. I pour off the top half just into another jar, and you can use that for filler or for whatever. And then I just add thinner to this part so that the mixture has, in essence, more pigment. Now there's a point at which you might be thinking, well, why not just use straight pigment? No, you need some binder. But when you're trying for the ultimate light finish, to shave that last ounce or two, you almost have to decant all the lighter colors so that they'll cover in one or two coats. Brodak, this is going to be an all Brodak dope finish, and Brodak dope has more pigment than other brands, but this even spikes it even more. Find it real helpful to have a bunch of Campbell guns. Campbell guns are relatively inexpensive, and what I do is I have one for the white, one for the red, one for the blue, the camo colors, the yellow, and I never take that paint out of the gun. That stays in it. One for the silver, so that all through the paint job, whenever I want to do a little touch-up, the gun already has the paint in it. I can just take a part over, sandal, fix it, touch it up, whatever. Then I save the real good gun, the Will Namora gun, for putting on the clear. I don't like taking guns and cleaning them constantly. First off, the amount of money you spend in thinner to clean the guns, you can buy more guns. This way seems to work well for me. It's one of the things I've worked with over the years, and I'm going to use it. During the course of painting this plane, there'll be a gun sitting out there with every color paint in it that we possibly are going to use. It may sound like this is overkill, but these guns are relatively inexpensive. And believe me when I tell you, you start putting gallons of thinner through them, before you threw the third gallon, you could have bought another gun. And the guns, they keep the color. You don't wind up with a white gun with red in it, a red with white. That's a real good trick, assuming you can, finance the cost of buying 3, 4, or 5 guns, or how many colors you're going to have on a plane. Well, I'm probably the most guilty person on the planet. I wait till a day before I actually paint the plane to decide if I want to do wild camo, soft camo, razor stripes, whatever. Good sources, if you can't seem to come up with something unique, original, old books, magazines. In my case, I use the books with the Warbird pictures. Use the Reno Air Race books. Oh, you can always apply some of that to a Strega paint job, to a Cardinal or whatever. Get ideas. Another good source is I have a video of the Nats appearance judging from 4 or 5 years in a row. I just cut out the appearance judging, so it just plays for 2 hours with different paint jobs coming up constantly. This is a source of information. a source of getting an idea. If you don't have something in your mind's eye at this point in time, we need to commit sometime later today to making a paint job. Possibly the biggest one of all. My paint jobs tend to be a little bit lighter than most other people because I never, unless there's some compelling reason or just some small areas where black would go over white like on the invasion stripe, there's no double paint. To me, the worst thing in the whole world is let's assume you're doing this plane. Boy, this art's really taking a hit. And then you decide you want the plane to be orange, but you want it to have a black wingtip. Well, now you've got orange under black, and you've got this. That amount of paint is typically a significant 3/4 of an ounce to an ounce of paint. That's paint with paint on top of it. So I always backmask, and I try never, or do as little as possible to paint over other colored paint. Big mistake you can make is trying to sand colored paint. It leaves little scratches, and after you put the clear on, you can see them. So my feeling, unless there's a compelling reason or you're repairing something, never sand colored paint, and never sand candy paint until you have some coats of clear on top of it. Problems a lot of people have experienced, including myself, is you put tape on a plane and it pulls up the paint. Well, what I try to do is always rub it on my shirt first, and if it tends to get a little too sticky, you see there's a chance it's pulling up the paint. From John Brodak, a great tip that I've used over and over, heat it with a hairdryer, just warm it. It makes the glue remove very easily. Great tip from John. A little short list of tips, and they divide into two categories. Things that I'm sure work, if not every time, almost every time. Guaranteed good technology, solid technology. And then there's the maybes. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. When they don't, you're in big trouble. Now, what I've had in my lifetime, the best experience in about 45 years of painting things, the best, easiest, and overall cheapest way I know how to paint a plane is with 100% Brodak. Now, the things you can do to make yourself crazy, and we have some pretty experienced modelers that have figured out ways of making themselves crazy, is to try to mix and match paint. And what they try to do is put this brand over that brand, base it with this, mix it with that. This is always, maybe it works, and the reason it's so terrible in my history is it works some of the time. And you get, it's like walking into the lion's den and you don't get your hand bit off or your head bit off. Well, then you walk in again and again, but eventually you get bitten. Everything in life has a shelf life, including paint. It can be extended in a lot of ways, but it's best if every year you buy new material. Use up the old stuff on other projects. But when you've put 200 to 300 hours into building a plane, and then to try to use up some paint material that may be 3, 4, 5 years old, I don't know. Another thing is to say, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to use up, I happen to buy this $30 can of paint 20 years ago. I need to use it up or else I can't make my house payment. That is just not good technology, and you wind up risking more than you think. And I'm going to put another word into the maybe category because there's people that don't agree with this. But if I don't say it, then I'm being dishonest to my friends and customers. And that's never use nitrate. Now, you can get away with it at times. You can walk into the lion's den and run out. And several people have made award-winning finishes using nitrate base coats. But 10 times more people have had problems when they sand through the little high spots, and the material that combines with the nitrate and butyrate, it can make turn a plane into an alligator. It can ruin a year of your life. So my feeling is, if you want to be safe, see, you got to decide if you want to have a maybe finish or a definite finish. These are the things that, I don't know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But this I know works almost every time. You have to really get up early in the morning and find some way to screw this up. You have to really think, and we even have one person who decided to do a whole finish without any thinner at all, and I think he even escaped to a certain degree. And there's another point to this. there's a cost factor. Because you need roughly a half to a third, and that would depend on the finish, less material, even though the material may be $1 or $2 a quart more, you're using so much less. And then when you count in what your time is worth, with this system, one of the things, when you go with this, from the beginning to the end, in the end you save time, you save money, and you have a real good shot of really having a nice finish that isn't too heavy. And you've eliminated most of the risk factors that are associated with this kind of finish. So having put all this ahead of time, because I don't want to belabor this over and over again as we go through, I'm going to start masking off the plane today. And as I mask it off, any flaws I still see, I can still fix flaws in silver while I'm back masking the plane. So it's an ongoing thing now. But I should be able to get some of the back masking done today. It's warm enough to paint outside. I'm looking forward to seeing some of this paint getting applied. Now, in picking out a paint job, the first decision we had to make is, are we going to use invasion stripes or no invasion stripes? I feel the invasion stripes really set a model off. It's one of the things I kind of really enjoy about seeing these warbirds, whether they're P-51s, P-47s, or fantasy planes. I always have liked the look of the invasion stripes in the air and on the ground. And we also have another choice that's a very it defines the model, is do we want to have hard edges on the camouflage or soft edges? And we can make that decision later on. We don't need to make that decision right now. We also have choices of roundels. There are several prototypical, on British warbirds, prototypical warbird roundels. And of course we're going to have plenty of choices along the way. Once you start researching out paint jobs through books, you find out there's a lot of prototypical stuff that you never knew existed. A lot of it, especially the British planes, had a real wide variety of combinations of prototype paintwork. Some of the planes featured soft camo edges, some hard camo edges, some desert camo schemes. Some, in the beginning of the war, they were green and brown because they were fighting over England, over land, and later on they went to kind of a gray and green because they were fighting over water. Early warbirds, including the Typhoons and the Spitfires, the early ones were kind of a greenish and a brownish, which evolved into the blue, the kind of grayish blue that we associate with the late model warbirds. In fact, one interesting thing I've always thought of is I ever did a P-51 to make it a P-51 with the British scheme, because the way I love British paint jobs. I feel that's just one of the most attractive of the paintwork. And the Typhoon has very, very wide choices of soft and hard camo, various roundels, squadron lettering, banding on the fuselage, ID stripes on the bottom of the wing. You really have a wide range of choices, and you can still have a paint job that's relatively prototypical. Just for reference, the original Typhoons these were ID stripes. They're not really invasion stripes. They were only on the bottom so that they could identify the Typhoons from the Focke-Wulfs. And they had very small, you see the emblems are way in on the wing. Well, we're going to put the emblems way out on the wing, which is more like the later model ones, and we're going to include invasion stripes. So the first thing I want to do, and in making up the invasion stripes, one of the things I'm going to do is paint the whole band white. And even though I've just said I don't want to double paint, to back mask just a little bit of black, because the black covers so quickly, is almost non-productive. So I'm going to I'm going to make paper patterns first. I like to do everything with paper pattern, figure out where I want these stripes to be, how wide I want them, how thick. I'll make some black and white full-size patterns out of paper, like paper dolls, and then I'll lay it out in masking tape, look at it while the model's assembled in one piece to see that it's the look that I want. When it comes to British warplanes, there just are so many choices, and that's where it's handy to have a nice set of books. And I want to thank everybody that's either loaned me or given me material referring to the Typhoon and the Spitfire, both. The thing I thought about the late model ones that were actually Tempest. They used them for target toes, and they had stripes painted on the bottom. I think Art Edmison's son used that paint job already. But the thing I didn't like about that, I just thought it might be a little too over the top for our use, and I really want to capture that flavor of the warbirds, the warbird flavor. And there's various locations where they move the roundels to various parts on the fuselage. They're not all exactly the same when they have different squadron lettering. So we have a lot of choices. We can kind of improvise this as we go along. And because there's so many choices with Typhoons in both color and size and shape of the markings, we can have a pretty free hand in laying this out and still have it look relatively prototypical. So to take apart plane, the first thing I want to do is make up what I call paper dolls. The invasion stripes in full scale out of black paper and white paper so I can see what they look like, because if they get too wide, on a Spitfire for instance, they're about half of the span. But on a Typhoon, they're not half. They're a little bit less than half. So by having paper dolls, I can clip, cut, mix, match. No matter what kind of trim you're going to put on a plane, it's really handy to be able to put the trim on in paper first and change it 1,000 times before you make the commitment. Another point, if it's a take-apart plane, I want to have the plane in one piece so I can see how this is going to look in full scale. Time to cut paper. Now each one of these is a little bit different. The original Spitfire had the widest stripes. The last one had the thinnest stripes. These were down to 2-inch wide stripes. Now because the Typhoon has a longer wingspan, we're probably going to go with about 2 1/8. I'm just taking a wild guess. But I've always liked the way the invasion stripes looked in the air, on the ground, and while they're hanging up in the Spitfire bedroom. Then you can use the invasion stripes motif. There's no reason you can't use it on a Cardinal or on an SV11 or anything, really. It's one of the things that really does, in my estimation, show up well in the air and accent the pattern. Now, the thing I like about making up these paper patterns, of course, is I'm trying to plot the amount of wing. I'm trying to do it by percentage. How much of the wing is invasion stripes on a prototype, and how much is camo? And I think I've got that worked out pretty well now. But see, it all changes, even if you just do this. This is what paper patterns allow you to do. I move this out maybe a ½ inch, and what happens is I try to look at the invasion stripes on the real plane don't go all the way up to the fuselage. I'm trying to leave a little bar there, but it gives me that percentage, the percentage of the wing that's invasion stripes. In this case, it's a little less than half, well, maybe, I don't know, a small percentage less, anyway. Now this sets, I'm working off the edge of the fillet, this sets the first stripe, which is a white one. And I haven't put these, I'm going to paint this whole area white first. I reviewed the video and this was the first thing I did. And since the little paint jobs all went pretty smoothly, I don't want to get too cute here. Well, that's about the best compromise I have. And now I just need to put the 1/8" tape on this side. Now, of course, we want everything to be 90-degree parallel to the trailing edge. Now, the only tape I don't rub up on my shirt is the 1/8" tape. In this case, I want a sealed edge. And these have to meet right in the front of the wing, so I'm going to leave an extra little tail on. And this way I'm matching up the area, the exact area of the flap to the wing. I won't have a What is a anyway? Okay, now I try to make sure, number one, that the lines are running, measure this angle as 90 degrees. I don't want to have these off. And look at it from the front and see if, by looking at the picture, if I've captured just about how much of that wing actually is invasion stripes. Now these are set. Now the next thing I need to do is take the amount of area here, and it's 9 inches, divide it equally into 5 pieces, and make the equivalent thing in invasion stripes here, the same width. It can't be this wide. They're going to wind out about 1 3/4 inches, I think. Okay, that's about the dimension we want. So now I'm going to disassemble the model so I can carry this around the bottom of the wing and back mask out, so all these areas will be painted white. Now I haven't done the tape on the fuselage yet, and it's really difficult to get these to go around in equal bands. That's a little trickier than you might think it is, but for right now we need to get the edges both parallel. The technique that I use for backmasking, there's a lot of different ways to do it. This is a way that Walt Prey had told me about years ago, and it has served me well. This is an old roll of aluminum foil. I can't even unroll it, but I always buy the cheapest aluminum foil you possibly can. And in fact, I wanted to show this. This is what happens when it gets squashed and people sitting on it and stuff. You have to constantly worry about one edge. Of course, one of the choices you have, you can go buy the most expensive brand, and you could buy extra long, extra wide. In this case, the cheapest one to me is fine. I've always used this. When you start at this end, always is a pain. The trick is figure out how much you need. Lay it flat. Now I'm on a relatively clean towel. I just took these out of the wash. I take the green tape, or what normally is 3/4 inch tape. You can run it on my shirt, which I made sure that was a clean shirt today. I wasn't out coal mining or something. And then I want to leave about 1/8 of an inch exposed. And this now becomes backmasking foil. The tape has had a lot of the stick taken off of it. Now I can pick whatever part I want to use, and I want to backmask this, and put this piece about halfway up the 1/8 inch tape. Backmasking, a lot of people seem to have, well, it can be a nuisance if you're not using the easiest method possible. I'm not sure this is, but this is one of them. And of course, I'll thank Walt Prey for donating this, contributing this. He is a professional. And this is one of the techniques he uses in his custom painting. Now, I always like to just kind of seal it up as best I can. And anything I'm going to backmask now for the whole plane, because I'm not going to show it over and over again, is this is the technique. We leave 1/8 of an inch of the real masking tape, so you really only have the original tape that puts the edge, the rest that either holds the foil, or if you wanted to use paper or whatever. And I would suggest the tin foil is give it a try. The one thing you can do with tin foil, if it's a problem, if you get a big ball of it and squeeze it, you can put a little indentation in the wood, but don't squeeze it. You know, don't hit the plane with a hammer. The next thing I want to do, I'm in the middle of masking, because it looks like we have a paintable day. I'm going to mask this little bar of white in the back, and I'll use the same technique, make a pattern, lay it out, and back mask it. Pretty much all the variations had that same, it's typical of British warbirds. Pattern up. I just wanted to show how I go about doing this. It's really not a big high-tech thing. Here's the 3 pieces, red, white, and blue. But I need to have a way of attaching them, and we're going to do this over and over with patterns. So this would be a good intro to the technique, is make little squares where you can let tape go through. Now what this allows you to do is take a little piece of tape and set this in place. And this would work if you're doing cardinal arrowheads or a Bob Gieske paint job or a who knows what. It wouldn't even matter. So now what this allows us to do, once I have the little parts here, take the part it's actually going to go on, and I can maneuver it around to see exactly where I want it. I want to have about 1/8 of an inch. I'm looking at the prototype drawing, trying to get just a little more. Now what that does, that sets this piece in place. And I need to see, of course, I'll put the holes so I can tape this whole thing in place. Okay, now see, I've already run into a problem. See, I've got it too high. It's going off the rudder. And on the real one, it doesn't go off the rudder. So we can either make the part smaller, or I can move this down just a little bit. This is the kind of stuff, having these paper, I call them paper dolls, this really does add a lot of ability to fine-tune it before you make a commitment. Okay, that's about the prototypical location. Now what I need to do is put the holes in these parts so I can have this all taped in position at once. The pieces, this will allow this to kind of stick in place. It'll allow me, of course, to move it around a little bit, and also to get them symmetrical. Okay, the first thing I want to do, I need to check that I'm not running off the rudder, or that doesn't exactly look right. Okay, now what this is going to allow me to do, let me get the 1/8 inch tape. I can set a line so that both sides will be equal. So just be a reference line. It really does look, it doesn't look real nice when you look from the front and one's higher than the other. It's just as easy to paint them correctly. I also need to check, of course, so I don't want this to run off the rudder. Okay, that's okay. But for this point in time, I only need to mask this part. So what I can do here, I can just put little reference lines. This is going to give me the wraparound, so I have it the same on the other side. Actually, we're going to have enough time today to even lay out the roundels, which I didn't expect to do, but it looks like we're going to have enough time. Everything is based on the weather here. We try to get this done. When the weather's good, we rush like crazy people. When it's not good, we just take our time and work on other things. Okay, now that gives me the layout. Now I can take this piece out, and that's now the piece that I need to paint white. When I flip this over, I'll put these lines around so that I have the height right. When you look from the front, it'll have the same height. Trick you can use in backmasking an area where you know you only have a small area, and we do this with roundels and other things sometimes. Lay a piece of tin foil on here and see what happens. It makes an exact impression. Then you can carefully cut that piece out oversized. See how it picks up the piece? And we can cut that out about 1/8 of an inch larger. Just put the tape around here, and we're done in one piece of foil. We've backmasked the whole part. Now with that piece cut out, this is a real neat, time-saving way. I already have the tape. The tape stickied, rubbed, de-sticky, de-rubbed. Never can figure out exactly what the right word is there. This is a good way to do it, and it's a time saver. We'll do pretty much the same thing we lay out. I think we're going to have time to lay out the roundels today, too. See, you never do know. When that phone starts ringing, I'm never sure how much I can get, if anything, done here. It looks like we're on a little bit of a roll here, and if we can get the the white parts of the roundels laid out, and we could spray pretty much all the white that's going to be on the airplane in one day. And you really can't do more than one color per day. You see how nice that is? Now I can do the same thing on the other side. And I'm ready. I can just spray that area. Kind of a nice little tip, worth its weight in gold. Getting these roundels, there are several choices of how to do them. We're copying these off of a Spitfire, even though it's not a Typhoon. Because again, we're not making a scale model, but by laying it out with a compass, and I wish I could tell you how many pieces of paper I've wasted doing this. It's getting these proportions right, because this band is a little bit wider than this one, and the proportion, I hope we've got it, but you never do know. Oh, I just think they'll look outstanding with the little yellow band around them, as opposed to, you know, we've done 4 different ways already. But since it doesn't have to be prototypical, we want it to say British. And I think we've got, with that pattern, which is only about the 600th one, we're going to cut it out. Do the same thing, mark the little squares so we can tape it in place. Because all we want to do is paint, well, we'll paint the red too, because it's ridiculous to back that a little amount off. We're just going to mark off the circle that will eventually be the white and the red. This way we can paint. And also another nice thing too, these roundels would be the same on the bottom. Typically British planes have the yellow band on the bottom but not on the top. But this one shows a pretty good replication of how this would be. And again, it doesn't have to be real scale. We want some reference lines about where we want to do this, and we want to leave 1/8 of an inch here. I don't want to have this come out to the hinge line, so I can reference that I'll go right to the middle of that cap strip, and that should be just about right. Now, after placing these patterns, I've done a couple little experiments that I'll share with you, because basically they didn't work out. What I did, I wanted to lay this out. I have a mark where 1/8 of an inch is. I know which cap strip I'm off. Basically that positions it. This positions the part that we're going to paint white. So these are the templates for positioning the roundel, because, you know, of course it wouldn't look the way we want it to if they're uneven. Now that holds it in position temporarily. Now what I did, I used some frisket film. Frisket film can be really beneficial. I'm not really crazy about it, but I thought, yeah, I haven't used it in a while, so let me cut up. I'll show you what I did. I cut up some frisket film. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but I'll put the label on here later. I cut a piece of frisket film thinking, well, wow, this will be great. Well, I'll do, because you can cut it with a compass with a razor blade, so you get a real nice edge. And I laid it down like I'm doing right now. And the one problem I had was where the edges are, because of the open bays. I believe it's because it's just not sealing down the way I wanted it to. So rather than risk having paint bleed underneath, what I'm suggesting, maybe the frisket film might work well on if we were doing these on the fuselage. So I'm going to save the frisket cutouts for now. See, on a nice piece of wood, it leaves a nice edge. That's definitely doable. So what it doesn't do is go around corners, and it doesn't like to bend. So rather than do it this way, I'm going to go back, and this is why I always like to have the original method and a backup quarterback method. Where's that thing? If anybody is interested, or if you've never used photo frisket film, this is about I'm not sure, about 20 bucks if I remember right. It's relatively expensive, and I would say on totally flat things it's fine, but it doesn't like to go across silk span for whatever reason. And it's made by Badger. Any art supply place will have it. Anyway, we're going to go back to using the old masking tape and tin foil, and a lot of times it's the old method that works the best. I had done, just for references, I had put a blade into one of these $1.50 compasses, and then found out that I couldn't control it from going back and forth, so I put some CA on it, and that worked well. I'm getting the perfect circles that I want, and they'll probably work on a fuselage or on the lettering or on some other thing. but it's just over open bays. It seems like it just doesn't have enough stick, and of course that's the purpose of it, is that it doesn't pull up airbrush finishing. But the CA held the compass in place, and of course when I want to move it, I'll just break the CA away and re-CA it. And you can use, they make, by the way, a drafting compass that has a rotating blade on it that's relatively expensive. It's out of my league anyway. This seemed to work as good as I would want to say. If you had a foam wing plane, this would be fine. One of the things about masking a relatively curved area that I found helpful is I have to use two hands. I really can't do this like a lot of people can. What I do, one finger is pressing this down. It's 1/8 inch ordinary masking tape, of course. But notice how the one hand is following. Really hoping I could use that frisket foam too. That would have really saved some time, but we'll find some use for it. A lot of times you find a new product or something you haven't used in a while, and the first thing you try it on isn't the thing that works well. When I've tried to help people figure out how to lay masking tape down real easily and conveniently, watch what's happening. This hand is turning, this hand is pressing. It's two motions. And it's good to just practice on on your tabletop. Practice laying out some circles first. Because now I usually can do this relatively, that word relative is always important. Again, another little advantage, by having this white, it'll make the red a little bit brighter. It's going to be Miss Ashley red, of course, but rather than using insignia red, the Miss Ashley red is just a tad brighter, and I kind of like that. Again, it's not a scale model, and the red will, I think, show up in flight a little bit better. Now, once we have this pressed down, I don't need the tails on here now. I know I've got it positioned where I want it, so this piece can come right up. Of course, I'll seal all the edges with a tiny brush with a thin coat of clear, especially over open bays. Now see, this is an area where the masking tape is an upgrade over the frisket, assuming that we're going to get a nice edge here, which we don't know yet. But now this is ready. I'll take the tin foil, the same way I did the other piece, lay out my circle, and I'm probably going to be able to do this maybe in one piece. That picks up the impression. Now see, I leave just about 1/8 of an inch showing. I can take a piece of tape that's already been rubbed on a shirt or a towel. Now what I try to do, especially with roundels, because we're going to be doing this over and over again, rather than try to bend the tape, I do this operation, which works well in a lot of trim schemes, because you really can't bend 3/4 inch tape as conveniently as maybe some other material. Yeah, I think on a fuselage we're going to be able to use the frisket, but right now, the first time out of the gate here was not successful. I don't think it was successful anyway. Anyway, we'll finish this up, back mask this, and then we're ready to shoot white. Get a position, and then we can replicate that 3 other times. Now, of course, the next thing is we want to decant up some white. Make sure it's fully decanted. And see if the weather's going to cooperate with us for the next half hour and get this sprayed. And then that'll be all we can do today. For the judgment day is here. Time the weatherman says you have a nice sunny day, forget it. Now that's the kind of coverage I like to have. When the paint is decanted, we get the pressure down to about 20 psi. the smaller parts first to make sure that we're going to get the coverage we want. Not sure with the sun going in and out the way it is. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the parts in the car to dry since I can't put them downstairs until I gas off. It takes about 4 hours in this temperature. Ooh, you can see the wind blowing. Whoa. Hey, calm down. It's going to be difficult to do the wing out here. I guarantee you that. Looks to me like we have the paint just about right. And all that means is we're probably pretty lucky. I think it's pleasant being out here. Believe me, it isn't. It seems like it's getting colder by the minute. But anyway, what this means is tomorrow we could start working on the second trim color. All this talk about spring is nonsense. There's no spring today, baby. This is cold out here. What I decided to do, I'm going to take and put the stuff in a WinStar until it gases off. It's murder out here. But we did all this in one day, so I guess just we're gaining on one and losing on one. It's not the end of the world. Love those invasion stripes. The latest technology, letting everything dry up inside the WinStar. Even though it's bright and sunny, the temperature in there is a lot better than in the garage or out here. It's cold. Now what I want to do next, I want to lay out the squadron numbers, letters, and I want to, hey, I said I want to answer the phone before I do anything today. Now, I always like to invent my own squadron, so to speak. Now, the original Spitfire, I made the Squadron FZY, a mythical squadron, for Fuzzy. The Seafire is a mythical squadron, FXT, for Fix-It. And of course, the I-Beamer, because we were using a jet motor and I was doing a lot of work with George Aldrich, we named it GMA. Well, this year, I love these squadrons, the lettering, it's kind of a neat little thing. And every year I pick something different. Well, this year, because everything's very romantic, my wife has been working so hard and so long to make us a good life, I've decided to make it the Karen Squadron. K-Y-N. My wife spells her name K-Y-N. So we're going to make our mythical squadron this year is going to be K-Y-N for Karen. You can notice most of the squadrons, of course, they would have some code word or letter, but we're going to use KYN and dedicate this plane to Karen. Even the bombers had the squadron markings. As I'm looking over the book, even in the beginning of the Air Force, they had these squadron markings. They kind of fell in love with this right away. I guess it was a way of identifying planes while they were flying before the time of mass communication. Even the British Corsairs had some squadron markings. Also noticed even on the Spitfires, some of the times they're much larger in the front and they place them at different places. I guess they weren't too concerned with it to make it pretty, because it was a war, of course, but they wanted to make it readable that other planes in the squadron could see them, I guess. Even the Sterling, a short Sterling. So that is definitely one of the things that makes a British plane a British plane. Even on the Mustangs they had it. Now we know this is the pattern for the invasion stripes for the fuselage. So I can lay out the lettering now in these unique little boxes. I need to put a roundel and the 3 letters. Needless to say, I just lay this out using a little, let me show it. To make up the whole thing, this is 4/10 of an inch wide. And I know the dimensions roughly from the other squadron markings that I've done, so I just laid this out. Now I can cut these out and then figure out how big I need to make the roundel. Doesn't this remind you of being a kid and playing paper dolls? Now come on, admit it, you played paper dolls when you were a kid. Anyway, I'm going to try to cut this out using this as a pattern and make a one of those clear templates, because that's a relatively flat piece of the fuselage. And now I know the dimension I need to lay out, because I can't make it any longer, to lay out the roundel. Now from looking at this, what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to make a whole nother roundel because I want to make it bigger. This is what I like about having this, is I can do this, like I call it fine tuning. This looks like I need to make a whole nother thing and just make it maybe 1/8 of an inch bigger. Now in today's mail, this is one of the things I really love about being in this kind of an endeavor, a business, whatever you want to call it. This is Rory Tennyson. He always sends me cool little stuff. He sent me Lionel trains, he sent me cattle cars and whatever. And he even sent a nice note. He says he saw one of the videos that apparently where it snowed here, and he says you're always whimpering and whining about snow. Here's his house in Montana or wherever. And just to cheer me up, Rory sends, and I mean this is the kind of stuff. How can you hate the guy? Chewy gum pizza. Anyway, I'm going to have this for lunch today. But first, we're going to get back to the shop. I'm ready. We are in a break of weather. It's warmed up, and we're ready to paint invasion stripes. I brought everything in from the van, and by the way, that worked great. The stuff dried up. There wasn't a tinker of an odor in the house. Great. And what I always like to do before I start pulling off masking tape, look at how the edges came out. This looks like it's going to be fine. Now the fuselage is ready for, see, I try to evaluate now. I can get 2 colors sprayed in one day here for this reason. I can lay out the black invasion stripes and I can lay out the lettering, but that's going to be kind of a complex operation here. And I do the invasion stripes last. So I'm going to put this guy aside over into the bullpen here for a while. What I'm trying to figure out is, are there any parts that I can get the next color on without doing a lot of work? Well, first of all, I can get, since we're going to do the red on the roundels, I'll mask out the red on the rudder. I'll mask out the red on the roundels. Then when I get done with that, actually I can mask this all out at once. Whoop! As he drops a flap on the floor, you can tell I haven't had my coffee yet, by the way. A good trick that I learned long ago with invasion stripes. I'd always have this, and I try to just estimate where it is, and then when you go to line it up, it would be crooked. If it's off even a pencil line, it looks terrible. So I'm going to take the tinfoil off the edge, so I can actually put the flaps on before I lay up the invasion stripes. So by making this plan, I see I can actually get two colors done today. I can get the red on the rudder, the red on the roundels, black on the invasion stripes, black on, and it's important to kind of try to figure that out ahead of time, or else you get the whole thing backmasked, and especially if you don't have multiple guns. If you have multiple guns, it's less of a problem. But it'll be a relatively simple thing here to lay out the black striping. We have patterns. And then I'm going to try again with that clear, I can't remember the name of it, and see if that's going to work on a flat fuselage side. Anyway, I can't wait to get started. The spring is in the air. You know, you have that cabin fever. We've been shoveling and everything. I'm ready. And I think the guys are going flying Saturday. I'm not sure. One thing that I've seen as a problem from time to time, when something sits out in a cold garage or a cold environment, the tape gets really sticky. It gets stickier than if it were in a warm environment. It seems like warm, and I'm just going to take the first few pieces of tape off real carefully, because I don't want to take any chance that I'm going to have a problem here. And I can usually tell right away if this is going to come off the way I'd expect it to. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Now, we have a pattern. The next piece on this is, I believe the red is in the front. I better check. Yeah, the red is in the front. And then reverse the whole procedure, so the only thing showing is the red, and that'll be ready when we do the roundels. Save all my patterns, so it's just a question of, and I'll pass these on to Elliot so he can include them on the plans. And we have a little template. We have to cut that one piece of tape away, and then just backmask that. Well, since this paint is only about 12 hours old, see what I'm doing? I'm trying to tear it slowly and straight back. Now that little edge I need to knock down with a credit card before I lay out the next piece. I just knock that little edge off like shaving it. And we'll be doing this to every paint edge as we go along on an ongoing basis. I backmask a color that's already painted. What I want to do is leave just a razor edge of the original color. Because I don't want to have is a gap here where I can see a silver line going up. That's very hard to touch up. If this line is a little crooked, it's not really difficult to touch up. Also, get my fingernail down in there and clean the corners. Get a thin coat of clear on there with a brush and backmask it, and we're ready to paint the red. So actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to backmask everything and do all the spraying in one operation. We use the same old method once it's taped off. Make an impression, cut the hole. The backmasking is done in about 30 seconds. This technique works so well, you can use it on any trim job. What I emphasize is just rub the green tape up on your shirt, flannel shirt, towel, whatever. And you'll find the backmasking part of the job will go very quickly. I have a little rule of my own that you never leave tape on any longer than it has to be. This has been on 12 to 14 hours, how long it's been on. I never like to leave any tape on any longer than I need to have it. Many times I've left tape on for a couple of days, a week, and it can be difficult to take off depending on the temperature you leave it at. In this case, we're not going to need this line anymore. We're done with this line. And we're just going to mask out here, so I don't need this edge of tape. So I can take the tape off, card it down. Hope you guys ain't taking my Grand Union number and running out and charging up some pizzas or something. As soon as I take that tape off, I like to get that edge clean on an ongoing basis. Same thing with this side. Actually, any of the tape that I don't need to leave on there, to get it off as soon as possible. Take my patterns, and for the purposes of laying this out, I'm going to reverse the black and the white, because the white is a more flexible paper. Anyway, took all the tin foil off, and we're ready to lay out the invasion stripes. Now, one of the things I kind of forgot to do is, if these wind up being white, I'll just have to go back and spray it. That's another nice thing about having, the paint in the gun all the time. I always have the white paint in the gun, so I can just backmask that later and shoot it. Even when I tell you, invasion stripes, if you choose invasion stripes, are just like roundels. They look real easy, and if they're off just a 64th of an inch, they look terrible. Now what I did, I want to reverse these. See, this was the whole objective here. Because I want to lay this piece in place. And then once I get these laid out, it'll just be easier backmasking it this way. This will place this one. And when we go to do the fuselage, I have to lay out, I can't do the stripes yet. On the fuselage, I have the, oh look, maybe this is going to wind up right in the black. Whoa, we're lucky. You're lucky, dog. Okay. See, I didn't even have to tell you I screwed up. See that? Now this'll kind of set this in position. But even the roundels, when you start cutting roundels and you try to get the circles, if those circles are off just a little bit, oh man. That's the first thing Joe Adamusco noticed when we were doing the original Spitfire. He called me up and said, those roundels, oh my God, they're awful. And he was right. Now these will obviously be the black stripes. That'll all be black, so might be it's my lucky day. And we need to tape this down just a tad. So I can get the blender in. And what I do when I'm all done is I go around the whole thing and measure. Make a gauge up so I see if I'm same. I'll do that with a gauge. You can even do it with a ruler. But just to make sure that we don't have one that's way fatter than the other. I've always really liked the way the invasion stripes, even on Todd Lee's plane last year, they looked good in flight. Here is the critical thing, is where they join. Boy, when that's off even the thickness of an ink line, you go back and you put the flap on and it really jumps right out at you that it's wrong. I hope you appreciate the humor in this. This really isn't black, just was kidding. But because it doesn't go across a paint line, I can just paint it white. Some days you win, some days you lose. I can remove these pieces. And the back masking is basically the same. I know there's no point doing that over and over and over again in real time. But the objective here is I don't have the double tape. I haven't left any of the tape on overnight. Tape's been on the plane 12 hours and it's all off, and this is all new tape. And this is only going to stay on 12 hours. Laying this out, I went to the mail. I got 4 more tapes. I'm up to tape 10 for AlRabe's Millennium Mustang and some of the little trick stuff he's got on that. There's some really neat stuff on that. A lot of little unique stuff. The more people we can get to shoot video, and boy, I appreciate everybody that's contributing, the more ideas we'll have. Kim Doherty is the latest one to want to get in on the carbon fiber wing project, and having this all on video is so convenient. This is the key thing, to make sure everything lines up in this dimension, and that where the flaps come together, that there isn't. I've slit the tape, but I want to make sure everything lines up. I gotta tell you, now one thing though, I'm doing this, and I'm not used to watching other people work on video. Al's putting cowling mounts on a fiberglass cowl. It's nice watching somebody else work instead of seeing that greaseball windy up there and that dumb bird and everything. It's really nice. By the way, I really appreciate, I have to say this over and over again, that Al has I've picked up a couple little ideas that I want to use in the future, and just hearing him talk, from time to time. Everybody, when they speak, there's little gems in between it that you can pick up for your own modeling, and it's just great that people have picked up on the idea that I'm not the only one in the world making videos. And I know we're going to get some from Bill Rutherford. They're working, by the way, on a carbon fiber fuselage Bearcat with Richard Oliver. This ought to really be awesome. And we will get some video from him. And this is just totally random. Al is describing how he scales down, and I never gave a thought to the stars and bars can't be any bargain to paint on either, and how they have to be in proportion to the plane, and you can see it's exactly. Now how cool is that? I think that's really cool when you can, I'm working along here, and I mean he's working on a similar part of the plane. He's doing it a different way, but it's the same thing, and the fact that we can learn from each other and share it, I think is just cool as can be. Other thing, we're doing the markings, and he's describing his way, and a Mustang, of course, is totally different. He has dimensions to work off and how he scales things. Well, I'm totally intrigued by the way he does this. It's something that, well, I do something similar, but his is a lot more precise in the way he does it. A lot more scale. See, I'm more like an illusionist of trying to create illusions, and it turns out the Mustangs had very specific spots where they put these stars and bars, and the British planes didn't, not to my knowledge anyway. In fact, if you look at some of these British planes, they're pretty freelance in the way they're done, but again, to have both choices, that's the whole deal here. Up on tape 10 here, and Al's doing some fiberglassing of the fuselage. Interesting stuff. Again, we're kind of all doing similar things, but so many things we can learn from each other. Now check it out. We just got done with our canopy video. Al is doing the exact thing that we did, painting inside the canopy, adding details inside the canopy. Amazing how similar, how many similarities there are in what we're doing. I'm backmasking everything here. I'm trying to get a little bit of speed on because I can see the weather is starting to get colder than what I thought it was. It started out warm today and it's getting colder. And we want to get this painted today. Because every day I try to get minimum of one more color onto the plane. This way I can keep a pace up, keep a schedule up. Lay out the roundel, the part that's going to be red, and backmask it. By the way, watching this AlRabe video, just great. And I'll tell you, I just say it over and over again how much I appreciate it. But one of the things Al mentioned on a video is that he makes his canopies airtight, because the only time when he had left an air hole in them, it wound up full of junk, balsa dust and stuff. Well, might I suggest that one of the things would be worth, and next time Al and I have a conversation, I'll mention to him, a little coffee filter might be a helpful thing, and that's the kind of information we can exchange with each other. See, now this is setting this in place. What I really like about the way that Al does things, he proportions things. He's got a real good artistic eye for that, which I don't really have. I have I don't know what we could call it. I'm not sure how that would relate. Now, needless to say, this would set this in place. Now we have to do the 1/8 inch. And because it's bellied and bowed, I'm not even going to try the frisket paper. I remember Steve Busso, telling everybody and then writing a great article that was in Stunt News about the frisket paper. The only problem is Steve always built, at the time, foam wing planes, which that changes everything. An I-beam plane, of course, would even be worse. Now, I just wonder if we had video years ago, I mean a lot of years ago, when Harold Price was alive, when Jim Solhavy was in the event. Some of the people at Charlie Lickleader, that's just things I remember from my childhood as thinking, wow, I would love to know how they did that. I remember seeing that canopy in a ballerina and saying, whoa, whoa. Made me jealous. But it gives you a goal to work toward, but you have to have these things somewhere in your life to set a goal. And it's unfortunate for us that video came rather late in our lives. I don't have any video of my childhood. I don't have any video of me, my early Lionel train layouts and things when my father was alive that I would have loved to have. Or even things when we were flying in the 60s with Harold. I wish I had more of that. Thing to remember, because this is an inside curve, I'll put even an extra coat of clear on it. Because on an inside curve, the tape tends to wrinkle up a little bit more than on an outside curve. So I won't try to do it with one coat. I'll brush on 2 coats there. That'll be just to try to get that edge as smooth as possible. And what'll happen is the Miss Ashley red over the white will be much brighter. Thinking of things, if Bill Rutherford does that Bearcat, I don't know, we might just have to have a carbon fiber Bearcat. I don't know, that might be hard to resist. I'm up to Brodak with that new Mustang. I'll work on that. Thinking of sad things is, you know, I see looking at all these old videos. Had a special request for some video by Jim Casal of Jim Casal's old flying days, and we're working on finding some nice stuff. But one of the things we don't have, I don't have no flying at all of AlRabe. So if anybody out there has some video, I'm hoping maybe Bill Rutherford, as an example, had some AlRabe video of some of those flights or movies we could convert. I'll be glad to convert them. Anyway, that's the magic of video. I'll make sure we get an extra coat of clear on there so we get a nice line. Plane, just as an example, is a perfect candidate for a cockpit that comes apart, and he even has a pilot. So one of the things you would have, and I'm just thinking of these things, you could have a pilot that when you fly F2B, you could take not only the cockpit out, get rid of an ounce or 2 or whatever, get rid of the pilot, fly F2B, you go to the NATS, put it back in. I'm not sure I would take the pilot out though. This is the method where you put a lot of pins around the end of the canopy and stuff. This is pretty interesting. He's gluing the cockpit area right in, it's detailed. I just love it. And it's making the last few days, it's making them go by very quickly. Anyway, we gotta finish up this wing, finish the roundels, and get outside and spray. We're losing time. Ideal conditions, we have quite a bit of, in fact, more wind than I want. The Miss Ashley red is a color that covers extremely well. I guess you can see that. There won't be any problem at all getting coverage on that, especially over a silver base. And we'll do the roundels first, the center of the roundels, while we have the red out here. 2 days in a row, at least had paintable weather, because we have had our share of no paintable weather, that's for sure. Need to use my knee here. Boy, that wind is blowing more than I thought it was. This is what's handy about always having a gun set up with every color, is when you make a little mistake, just go back and correct it, and you go erase the video so nobody knows. Everybody knows, don't you worry. It is so handy to have multiple guns. Once you see the merit in it, and it really does in the end. It saves time and it saves money because you're not cleaning the guns with thinner all the time, and thinner isn't cheap anymore. I've been trying to get the paint to go on real thin, and putting 2 coats on instead of one relatively thick coat, because this covers, needless to say, pretty well. But to give it 2 coats that are very thin, hoping that it'll lay down a little bit better. Because believe me, the black shows all the flaws. You can get away with flaws in white, but anything that shows through in the black is going to be a problem. The places that always get an extra beating, of course, are the leading edges. And those are the 2 places where you'll tend to buff through. Still think it's better in this case to give it 2 light coats instead of one real heavy coat. Oh, I don't know if you can see, but by doing 2 thin coats, I hope, well, we'll see when it dries, because we've been putting it out in the van just to keep the smell down in the house. Now this may be something that other people can use if you leave it out here 3-4 hours. Yeah, the smell stays in the car, but then the next day, if it's not raining, I leave the windows open and it kind of goes away. This has served us well and allowed us to paint without getting any real odor in the house. Not today. I think I'll have a soda. Oh, I think I'll share it with the bird. Hey, it's my soda. And today, before we go to work, from Walt Brownell. And Walt, of course, is making his version of the Typhoon. I'm going to read the captions. Ring underside with opening for battery, receiver, servo, and bomb drop. Ring tip with plug for signal from Bill Young handle just behind the lead-out slot. Now Walt said he's going to send some pictures early next week. Didn't you? I'm just kidding. Battery, servo, receiver switch located for mock-up purposes. We'll take all that equipment out, of course, for Tampa stunt. Bomb release mechanism operated from servo, pulling 08-inch stranded line routed through yellow tubing. Walt, I gotta tell you, I look forward to, I hope you're gonna make Borac, but if not, I want to get these 2 Typhoons together. Removable section, the mock-up for access to equipment. Wing cutout for the tank used to connect throttle servo. Removed for Pampa stunt. I like this idea. By the way, look at this. This is Fleet. This is the one we like here. I'll tell you, this is one of my thoughts. B25, B26. I've been thinking about it a lot. Marauder. McLean sent me a bunch of good information. Typhoon inlet. OS 70. Throttle control. These are real fuzzy, these pictures, so it's not my camera work. Anyway, Walt, I have to go back to this picture here for a second. This air spray thing, this is something I really like. And I'll tell you, if I do some kind of multi-engine thing in the near future, this is one of my, and that paint job is outstanding, by the way. Anyway, thanks a lot, Walt. We appreciate it. We get back to work on our Typhoon. To do is take off all the old masking tape, and I mean all of it, because I need to lay out a line, a parallel line to my thrust line here, so that these letters don't wind up walking up or down. And I need to make up a separate dedicated pattern for that. Now I just have to, what I'm real concerned with, this is my level line, and I don't want to vary that too much.
Don't be sad, I must add that they meant no more than...
I want to make sure I have this spacing so that I don't have a letter half in one and half in the other. So this is a little more complicated than I originally anticipated, like everything that we do. Nothing ever starts out easy. Let's see. The easiest way is going to be to just lay this out and then draw a tape line.
I'd be caught in a state that's so delirious.
First, I need to get a rough idea of where this is going to go. This is the kind of stuff AlRabe would be good at. And by the way, looking forward to seeing his video on finishing the model. That'll be a treat. Establish a line here.
Don't wake me if I'm asleep.
And I'm going to see if I can use that.
Let me dream.
This is going to take a little improvising here.
Kiss me once.
Okay, so that looks like we want to go even a little bit higher. So now to establish a higher line,
that makes the rice.
I know you're saying, why does he lean in front of the camera? Anyway, so we can use this line.
For heaven's sake, how long?
Now see if that's going to be our... See, now it's too high. So what I need to do is figure out, roughly this will be halfway. I'll put a 1/4 inch tape there. And this is the kind of fooling around back and forth until I get this laid out the way I want it. Okay, with a 1/4 inch, that looks better. Now, I don't want to use that line. What I want to use is, this will set the line. Now I can just take all of this off. As you can see, what happened is I tried to frisk it. The frisket, I just made a mess out of it. I just couldn't get it. When you go to lay it down, it would move all over the place, and I couldn't line it up. What this does, it gives me hard edges to work off, and I'm real good at, not good at, it's the devil I know, that I can line up the letters and just outline them with 1/8 inch tape, and I know all these lines will be parallel now. Now what'll happen is I'll have to fill in around here with backmasking, but this basically worked, I'm guessing, the half an hour or so, and it gives me an infinite amount of time to make sure I have each one exactly the way I want it. This one is going to, of course, it's bigger than the space, and no matter how I do it, that would be a problem. But other than that, it's going to fit fine. Once I paint these, then the next step is going to be the roundels. Open is going to happen, and I'm going to be able to make a mask for this whole thing in one piece. Still haven't given up on frisket. Maybe we can use it in the roundels. Anybody with any experience with brisket, hey, I'll take it. Now what this is going to do is make me a pattern from which I can probably, notice I didn't say will, I said probably, make something like a mask that'll minimize, otherwise I'd be making a gazillion little pieces of tape. Okay, you can see it's picked up the impression. Now I thought this would work. Let's see if I was right or wrong. Just as a way of making a mask. Actually, I didn't think of it. I may be able to use the frisket for a mask. Maybe when Midgley brings down that carbon wing plane, we'll do some experimenting with the frisket. But basically, that's what I'm doing, is just making up a mask, letter by letter, using up a number 11 blade. And I find it's better if you kind of saw it through rather than just let it go through. Of course, those people that have a like of the, there's a method they can make a computer mask with fancy lettering, but this kind of keeps it simple and cheap. Okay, now all I need is, actually this is going to work out pretty good. Surprised. Whoops. This looks like it will work okay. So we have caught a break here. And I just need to fill in all the little spots with green tape. It's the devil you know, the green tape you know. Well, looks like it's ready. I decided this would be an easier way than trying to do the roundels all at once, because it would make for just a bunch of intricate masking. This will be a lot easier. This will dry overnight. Once this dries overnight, we'll come back to this tomorrow. We can lay out the next step on this. Okay, she's dried up nicely. And the next step, of course, is just pull the tape off slowly, carefully, possibly with a little bit of heat if necessary on the tape.
But don't forget, folks, that's what you get, folks.
Put a couple more little tips on this before we close it out. We are at the end of the tape, of course, and I'm still looking through my footage. I haven't found any footage of Jimmy yet that I really like. I'm going to look at some more today, and maybe we'll include it on the next tape. We won't have any way we were for this segment. Trouble is you have to look through hours and hours and hours of tape. Sometimes, years ago, I didn't mark the tapes. But I know we do have some, and we haven't had any in a long time because Jimmy's been out of the event, of course. Maybe we'll someday get him back in. Seems like we all eventually come back, whether we like it or not. Anyway, the tip I wanted to put on here, and I totally forgot it, was whenever you're pulling tape like this up, always pull from the point out. It just seems to pull tape better. Here's an example over here. It seems better to do that than to go the other way toward the point. Maybe a tip you can use. Anyway, we're really moving along now. Now we're starting to make up time at last. It looks like we're getting a little break in the weather. And so even today and tomorrow, we're going to have 2 days in a row I should be able to paint. We have motors to break in, Zetrons to Zetron. I got to write my stunt news column. Always seems the best to start in the corner. And a special thanks again to AlRabe for sharing. Imagine if we had hundreds of people making videos of their projects, how interesting it would be, and how many tips you could pick up off of them, and what a much more intimate fraternity we'd be as stunt flyers. Beginning of every session, even though we're kind of at the end of this tape here, I try to never leave the tape on any longer than it has to be. I'll get all this tape off before I even start doing the next session of masking, which obviously will be on the next tape. But even now, it's starting to get that look of what the airplane should look like. When it's all put together, it looks a little bit like a Job Zero, doesn't it? Anyway, see you on the next tape. Thanks for joining us. We're going to try to finish up this paint job. Spring is coming, and we're itching to go flying.
Some forever, not forever. Some have gone, and some all